So I know you have opinions on challenges. Do you have any thoughts on challengers being in the Kennerspiel
I'm
category?
surprised. And I don't think this matters. I mean, I didn't hear a ton of chatter in the North American side. I mean, yes, it was talked about, but perhaps in Europe it was played out a little differently. Get it? Played out. But
I get it. I don't like it.
it just worked that way. I'm sorry. It's always a challenge for me to get those puns in. Wow, I am on a roll today, everybody. Hey,
Oh.
this episode is sponsored by Druid City Games.
It's time for the Salt and Sass podcast when we share our love for the wonderful world of board games with you, whether you're a gaming veteran or just starting your tabletop journey. Welcome to episode 19. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Mandi.
And folks, it is a big week in the wonderful world of board games.
It
Woo!
is.
The nominations for the illustrious Spiel de Jahres award has been announced. And of course, over the years, the Spiel, which is generated out of Germany, has evolved. So now, beyond the game of the year, the Spiel de Jahres, we also have the Kinderspiel de
Mhm.
Jahres, which is the more children's game of the year, and then the Kennerspiel de Jahres, which is the hobbyist, right? The more complex games, typically, I
J'espère.
think. I apologize. I should know what the Kennerspiel stands for, and I what Kennerspiel actually means. And of course, I'm sitting here
No, but now
totally
I'm
forgetting it.
yeah, it's something we'll have to look up because I know Kinderspiel, like Kinder eggs, right? Like for kids,
Right.
right?
Well, Kinder is like children's game.
Yeah.
Connoisseur.
It's
It's the
like
connoisseurs.
kindergarten. Uh, uh,
Well, English is technically a Germanic language,
there
so
you
there you
go.
go. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see those nominations. Now, for those of you who haven't caught it yet, the nominees for the Spiel des Jahres are Fun Facts, Dorf Romantic, the board game, and Next Station London. A Roland right, yo. And then in the Kinderspiel zone, we have Gigamon, um, Mysterium Kids,
Mhm.
and Cake Gourmet. Is that the name of the man? I may have just messed up the name of the game terribly, and I feel
It looks
awful. So
like
now I have
something
to.
caramel. No, I'm just looking at the picture here. Hold on. I made it larger. It looks like
Cake
Carla
Caramel.
Caramel.
Carla Caramel.
That's
I'm
ex-
so sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst.
I
That's
could
terrible.
be
I'm
wrong, but that's
embarrassed.
what it looks like
Yeah,
to me.
right. And then for the Kennerspiel or the Connoisseurs Game of the Year, it's Planet Unknown, Iki, and Challengers.
uh, No, I was gonna
Mandy.
well, yes, challengers, I know we're gonna talk about it, but I was actually thinking, I was looking at the French, titles for these, categories. Jeux enfant, which is like children's games, and then Jeux
Hmm.
expert is like for experts. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that could lead us into the understanding of, Kennerspiel. Anyway, continue.
Sure. So, this is really one of the most prestigious awards that a game can win in the hobby game world. And a Spiel win can propel a game's sales forward to massive
Mhm.
success, etc. So, it's a big deal. Now, this is certainly one of the first things that stood out to me, Mandy, is that as my children have gotten older,
Right.
I play different games with them. So I have not played any of the Kinderspiel de Jahres noms this year at all.
Yeah.
It's just, a fact. But so I really have no opinion on them whatsoever. The Spiel des Jahres is interesting. I am a huge fan of Next Station London, and of course, the roll and write format being one of my favorites, I'm kind of inherently rooting for it. I haven't gotten to play Dwarf Romantic yet. It just became
Mine's
available in
coming.
the United States.
It's coming. Ashley has
Yeah.
it. It's coming.
Ah, got it. Well, and again, these are German-based awards, so it's there will be games that you see nominated that folks in the US and Canada haven't had access to easily yet. So
Right.
that's very common. So Dorfromantic to me kind of fits under that. But as some of you know, Mandy and I have talked about before, Dorfromantic, the board game or the Romantic Village video game, is
Right.
a big favorite. This is a tile laying game. It's very chill and atmospheric, but for all the relaxing sounds and animations and the beautiful colors, it can get really stressful because
It sure
it's got
can.
this economy of tiles. The better you do, the more you score, the more tiles you get so that you can keep on growing your village and matching up sides and things like that. You get bonuses for perfect positioning and you can get really into it. As we've seen Isaac Childress of Gloomhaven and
Oh,
Frosthaven
yes.
fame, sometimes he used to stream this game and like I think at one point he was literally like the top player in the world.
Was
So
he
you can
really?
get
Oh, wow.
yeah, he had like the top score in the world. You can get pretty hardcore in Dorfromantic. So it's
Probably
really
is.
interesting that they've made it into a cooperative board game, and it's got elements where you, as you score, make certain achievements, you can unlock more content. You can unlock more tiles that they come in envelopes, which sounds like fun and an interesting way to kind of replicate the video game experience. And then, Mandy, I know nothing about fun facts. Have you played this or heard about
No,
it at
I've not
all?
even heard about it, but it sounds like it's like a trivia. It sounds like a trivia type game, which I'm all about, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that makes me want to explore. It's kind of a ranking game, I think, for, with you, like how long is the perfect nap is what BGG says, and then everybody writes their answer, and it's kind of a partyish game. It sounds like, which the Spiel nom makes me want to check it out. So I guess the Spiel
Yeah.
is doing its job. Now the Kenner Spiel is real interesting this year, Mandy. Planet Unknown is kind of a traditional board game,
Mhm.
right? In terms of mechanisms, it's got a cool aesthetic and it's got, that sci-fi setting, which we don't necessarily see a ton of in this award system. But it's city building and uh, drafting and things like that, which
Right.
very traditional. But then we have Iki, also a very traditional kind of, I'm not surprised to see it in the Kenner
Right.
Spiel, except uh Iki is originally published in 2015.
Right, I was gonna say,
So
this seems like a game that's older.
right, and that's the Kenner. I should have said the Spiel is for the year, right? Games released in a year.
Right.
And so it's very interesting that Iki is considered in this one because it's basically a reprint
Mhm.
or a new version. Now, I have not played the new version. I have the older version to know
Okay.
if there were substantive changes that may be the reason why they included it. But I thought I've seen some chatter about Iki being included in this year's noms, considering its original version was published in 2015.
Right.
And then challengers, I've seen some chatter about because the Kennerspiel is the connoisseur level award, which typically we see these more traditional style
Mhm.
board games like Planet Unknown and Iki. Challengers has a very different vibe and arguably fits a lighter
Yeah.
approach than we would often see in the Kennerspiel. So I've seen a little bit of chatter about, does challengers belong in that category? Now, Mandy, you're the one that introduced. In fact, Mandy, you even got me. You liked challengers so much, you made sure I got a copy. You gave me my copy. And I can see it goes up to 8, and I can see where that would be a total blast.
Right.
But it does feel like a party game to me, but
Mhm.
then I thought about it because Challengers has this deck building element
Right.
where there are 3 different decks of cards and they're different factions and you can build synergies in your deck so that when you go into that 3-minute round or 5-minute round, however long it lasts, you're like boop 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 and just kicking butt because you've smartly built up some synergies. So I don't know. Like I can see where there is a little bit of skill in the play. It's not just a pure luck fest, right? It does have I mean, deck building is a core board game mechanism.
It is, yeah.
So I don't. And ultimately, I don't care that much because I do think it's a good game. So at least
Yeah,
I feel like they're acknowledging a good game. Now, because the way they categorize it versus the way I would choose to categorize it, to me is highly secondary to
right.
they picked a good game to recognize, which makes me happy. So that's kind of
Exactly.
where I landed on it. Um, so yeah, we will see. I forget when the actual announcement comes out on
Mm,
who wins, but I I think that this is one of the more interesting sets of noms. And I would love folks for you to chime in on our Board Game Geek Guild or hit us up on social media or whatever with your thoughts. Whether you think Challengers is a great Kennerspiel nom, if you have any opinions about Iki being nommed, or if you have any insights into like
yeah.
the changes in the new version of Iki that's being nominated, I'd love to hear them. So chime in if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, Mandy, I know we've got a couple of games that we want to highlight that are currently being crowdfunded, but I also know, big week for video games with Zelda, Tears of the
Oh
Kingdom going. And
my
I mean,
goodness.
did you get it, Mandy?
No, so I was on Twitter about this. I think it was like maybe a month ago or so, and I was like, "Hey, I spent, because games here in Canada are fairly expensive. I know that they're raising prices, and a lot of Americans are losing their minds over how expensive they are. But guess what? In Canada, we're used to it. Australia, I'm sure they too are used to it. But I think I spent like what $90 or so on Breath of the Wild. So I was like, I'm gonna play this. I didn't love it. Sorry. The story for me
Yeah.
was just not strong enough. The weapons breaking just drove me up the wall. I was like, this is ridiculous. I was not about that life. So, no, wasn't giving what it should have been giving for me. So, I gave it 15 hours of my life and I was like, no, we're good. I don't need to play this anymore. So, when Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out, I'm like, okay. I mean, if it's more of the same, I'm not interested. But I did get a chance to try a friend's copy at their place. We're playing games. They're like, Mandy, come check out Tears of the Kingdom. You might like. I think you'll like this better. And, there were a few elements that were different than the first one, like, you can fuse things together to make weapons, and you can make some people are
Yeah,
making
yeah,
these,
yeah.
like, wild contraptions by, like, melding things together, which I think is really cool because I do like building, like, base building and stuff and Fallout, like, I like that sort of thing, so I definitely could see the appeal for that engineering aspect that I like. The weapon breaking system is still there, but I guess with the fusion of weapons, you can make them, like, stronger. They have, like, another level of world, like there's like these sky worlds or something that you can go to and get some fun resources. So my friend's like, it kind of reminded me of Animal Crossing when you go to those islands and get stuff
Hmm,
and then
hmm,
come
hmm.
back. So it's kind of like that. And anyway, so those are some of the few things that were added to it. So at the end of the day, still not spending $90 to get it. While whilst I think some of the things in there are really cool and fun, it's not $90 worth because I'm saving my $90 plus for something else. But before we move on to that, what are your thoughts, Suzanne, on Zelda Tears of the Kingdom? Like, is that
Yeah,
something
I,
you're gonna
I'm
get?
passing at this point. No, I mean, I am within certain circles. I am well known for my complete failure to play Breath of the Wild well because I missed, like, literally, I did something wrong at the very beginning of the game, and I
Oh
missed the
no.
guy that gives you the hang glider, and I played for 50 hours without the hang glider. Uh,
Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah,
yeah,
that's huge.
like I managed to climb down a cliff you weren't supposed to climb down by eating a chunk full of food, and then I got stuck, and anyway. And I mean, ultimately, I realized that just like all this combining things that you're talking about,
Yeah.
there's so many amazing viral videos going of all these contraptions that people
Oh,
are building. And I said this on social media. I said, you know what? I think I'm getting more enjoyment out of watching these
yes,
videos that people are making of their creativity
absolutely.
than I would playing myself, getting lost all the time, and watching the three logs I try to glue together float apart because I can't do it well. So for now, I'm gonna pass on it. I that is I really am so glad everybody else is doing so well at
Absolutely.
it and enjoying it. It's just not a fit for me right now. I mean, maybe later I'll give it a whirl or play a friend's
Yeah,
copy to
and
see if I want to try it.
that's
But
it. I
yeah,
might just borrow a copy, like, after
yeah,
everyone's done with it
when
or
they're done
whatever,
again.
check it out. But then I'm like not committed to it. You must watch some of the like contraption that are put together, the fails.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
Some of
no doubt.
them are so
Hilarious,
good.
amazing.
Anyway, so good. But remember how I was saying I was saving that $90 for something else? That something
Yes.
else is going to be Diablo 4. which I
Mm.
know so many people listening are like, "Diablo, I've already bought it," all the things, but, definitely looking forward to getting that. I'll probably end up getting the version because there's, like, 3, there's, like, standard, deluxe, and ultimate. I'll probably just get, like, the middle one so we can play it, like, a few days early, try and maybe pop that up on a stream or something, but for those I don't know, it's like, are you familiar with Diablo, Suzanne, or no?
I wasn't until very recently. I mean,
Okay.
I've seen it, but I never actually played it until, like, literally 3 days ago.
Okay, and I played it like a really long time ago, and I haven't played it since. So I said, it might be cool to get back in. Like, I'm a big fan of RPGs. This is like the RPG. So I'm like, I'm about this. And I like the way that they handle the combat and the classes are really cool. So my classes that I'm looking at are Necromancer. What did I say? Necromancer,
Rogue.
Rogue, thank you. I was like, there's another one. And Sorcerer. I usually always pick something magic, but I said, let's do a little magic, but something else. That's why I kind of went with Necromancer. Unfortunately, my brother, who I play with, also wants to be a Necromancer. And my other friend, who I play with, also wants to be a Necromancer. I'm like, come
Uh,
on, can we not
uh-oh.
just like mix it up a little bit? Nobody in our group wants to be a Druid or a Barbarian.
Okay.
What about you, Suzanne?
Well, so yeah, I never played a Diablo game before, and
Okay.
Justin Jacobson of Restoration Games, who I work with,
Mhm.
uh, is so hyped for Diablo 4, just so hyped for it. And I was like, "Well, maybe is this should I try this?" And he's like, "Yes, you should try it." I'm like, and then I went and I saw it was on Super Sale, like
Yeah.
for $15, Diablo 3. I'm like, well, all right. So yeah, I bought it on sale and played it just for a little bit over the weekend recently. And yeah, it's super duper fun. So I get it. I get it. I don't
Okay.
know if I'm ready to dive right into Diablo 4.
Sure.
I mean, I just got 3, but yeah, I get it. I can understand why you're hyped for Diablo 4 for sure.
Yes. I think I'm excited too to play with the people I'm playing with. That always makes a difference because right now
Yeah,
I'm playing
absolutely.
Redfall, which well, that when I finish Redfall, we'll have a discussion because it's like still really glitchy right now, but we're having fun. But
Yep,
we
yeah.
have streamed it on the Twitch channel, so if you want to check it out there, you can do that. But I won't get into any details now. So Diablo 4, definitely I'm gonna pre-order. I know Slivers, who listens to the podcast, will be playing with the team, with the group. I know he's really, really excited about it as well. And we'll eventually port Suzanne over maybe later on after she's completed number 3. Um yeah, so I've also been playing a couple. This will be some quickies here. Railbound, which I've been playing on Nintendo Switch. I think it is also on Steam. I told Suzanne about this one. She looked at it. She goes, I don't know if that's a me game.
Know thyself.
But it's like so fun and super cute. So you have these rails, like different rails, like you have different levels. It goes from like 1 to 10, and then you have some like really wild ones at the end that require use of like 77 tracks or something. This is where I am right now. It's just out of control. But the different levels, depending on how you do on the puzzles, will kind of path you through. So you don't do every single one in that level, and then it'll move you up to the next level. I actually went back and did all of them because that's how much I had fun with this. So it is a puzzle type game, and you have like your little trains. It's usually 1, 2, or 3 trains, like or cabooses, I guess you could say, and you're trying to put the tracks on to get them to connect to the main train, but they all have to go in order. So they're usually numbered like 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, that sort of thing. So you have to path the rails in a way that it gets to the main train in the order 1, 2, 3. Otherwise, you should see this little angry smoke sign comes up and it's like, and then you have to try again. It's really,
Noted.
it's super cute. And then sometimes they'll add things in the higher levels like stops where you'll have to put a stop in order for that train to stop so the other ones can go by, and just little things like that that you can amend your rails with. So I like these types of games. Am I always great at them? No, I actually do really well on the hard ones and struggle with the easier ones. It's very strange, but that's just my brain. But Railbound, I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's simple but puzzly. I love it. So
I'm glad you like it.
I won't even suggest it, Suzanne, because I know it's not your jam, but somebody else may enjoy this. But it's also the music
Absolutely,
is
yeah.
quite relaxing. So it's like a Dwarf Romantic, but with like a well, actually no, it's like a Dwarf Romantic actually, just rails. Suzanne's like, "No, you're not convincing me." Okay.
Anyway.
Lastly, Lords of Waterdeep, an oldie but a goodie. But David and I recently did a stream on that with the Steam version of Lords of Waterdeep, and you know what? I still really like that game, and I like it with the
It holds up.
expansion. Yeah, on the app, and the app does a good job. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Lords of Waterdeep. If you haven't tried it, check it out on Steam. It's a really good implementation.
That's awesome. A lot of
Yeah.
good gaming for you in the digital sphere.
I'm trying. I
Yay.
gotta keep it fresh for everybody on the podcast.
Well, games that we haven't even played yet are up next because we've got a couple of games on the crowdfunding platforms we want to bring to your attention.
Yes. All right, so I guess I'm going first. I don't know why I ask that every time we do this segment. It's literally in front of me that I'm going first, but then I always ask if I'm going first. So yes, I will be going first today, okay? So the game that I was kind of like eyeballing, taking a look at on Kickstarter was Botany Flower Hunting in the Victorian Era. And this is by Ducks.
Love it. Just the title alone
Right?
grabs me.
And the art is actually really nice on this one too. I
Okay.
really like the look of it. It reminds me of
Mhm.
those like vintage soap boxes or soap
Sure.
things that they
Sure.
had back in the day. That's what it reminds me of. Like maybe it's more
Nice.
Victorian, I'm thinking. And it's by the publishers Dux Somnium Games, and it retails for about 39 US for the standard version, but I think they have like a Kickstarter edition that's like $55 or something to that effect. It ends on Thursday, June the 1st. So you've got a little bit of time to get in and check it out if you're interested. And in the game, you take on the role of a plant hunter. Oh, look at that. In the Victorian era. Bam, I'm good. I didn't even read that, and I knew the art was Victorian. Ah, yes. So it's the Victorian art that definitely drew me in, and anything to do with flowers, birds, or anything like that, instant like I need to check this out. So I haven't backed it yet because I gotta slow it down a little bit, but it is definitely one that I'm looking at. So, botany flower hunting in the Victorian era, it's on the list.
It sounds awesome. Yeah, I love those floral themes, so that's really
Like
cool.
I'm scanning through it now. The cards are so it's a card based game. There's some movement on a game board, but okay, sorry, that's enough. Okay, Suzanne, have you been looking at?
I'm glad you're excited. That's awesome. So for me, Uncharted Stars, Uncharted Stars. I'll say the game name correctly. How about that? This is a roll and write game.
Oh, shocker.
Surprise! But this is a print and play roll and write game, which we have talked about. We often cover them here just because I love the concept of them and I love
Hmm.
how affordable they are. Right. So here we are again for £5 or about, US $7 ish. You can buy a copy of this game and delivery will be fast because it's all digital, et cetera, et cetera. The one of the big things I want to call out here is it's designed by Scott Almes. Scott
Oh.
Almes is a hugely prolific designer, the designer of one of my favorite games I've played this year called Beer and Bread,
Mm.
the Claim series, the Tiny Epic series, just a really great designer. So, right, you put Scott Almes names on it, kind of, I mean, let's face it, I'd be interested anyway. But this one is kind of in a Star Trek-ish like universe because you're going to be recruiting
Right.
crew and literally they call them red shirts and making robots and exploring space using this team that you've built up with dice that you have at home. They include full color art sheets or low ink versions, or even kind of blank versions so you can create your own characters, which
Hmm.
I love. That's really a fun way for you to dig in if you really like the game and expand it on your own. So, yeah, it's a roll and write game designed by Scott Almes with that kind of fun, tongue in cheek Star Trek approach. £5 pledge gets you all of that goodness, and the campaign ends June 11th. So you can find Uncharted Stars on Kickstarter.
There you go. Both run the Kickstarters for this one, so lots of good stuff.
All right, Mandy, lots of cool games to talk about. And yes, sirree, we do have our guest expert joining us for a You're the Expert segment in a little bit as well. So let's get going.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Well, I have a short list of games played, but that's okay because I'm amping it up for next time. But it's been wild. I got to balance the time with the board game, the video games. I just get so into it.
Oh,
But I actually have a different type of game that I'm going to talk about. It's a book game book. So it's called Journal 29 Oblivion Interactive Game Book. So this is designed by D. Chasapakis. I apologize if I said that incorrectly. And it is self-published. So I got it on Kickstarter, and I think it was about $19, give or take, uh, US, possibly.
Mhm.
But it's about $24 Canadian on Amazon. I believe that's where you can get it, or directly on their site. And it plays 1 to 10 players in about 120 minutes. It's really meant as a solo type of game. I think you could, in essence, play it with other people, which often I do actually. I created a Slack channel in our little
Oh, that's
chats
cool.
that we have
I love
for
that
Ashley
idea.
to help me out because sometimes I get stuck, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But Journal 29 Oblivion is not the first one. This is like I think the third one potentially in the series. I apologize, second or third one. But it's a game where you solve puzzles. So the book has different sets of puzzles. You don't have need to play. You haven't. Oh my gosh, words, Mandy. Use your words. You don't. You don't. Why am I struggling right now? I am on the struggle bus hard tonight. It is not necessary to have played the first two books. Heyo, I got it. You can just jump right into this one. They're not tied together. So in Journal 29 Oblivion, you solve puzzles and you can actually you're going to submit them online. So there's like a link you're going to go to verify that your puzzle's correct, and in doing so it'll then give you a response that'll move you along kind of to the next one. It's which will help you with the next one. And sometimes some puzzles will refer to previous puzzles you've done, or something on that page is going to help you. There's about, I think it's just over 100 pages in the book, with a total of 40 puzzles to solve. And that's literally the game. And I won't give away too much just in case people want to try it. But I will tell you, they're not easy. Some are. And when I say easy, some are like, just okay, I need to think a bit, but okay, got it. Some use a bit of math, some use a bit of that spatial reasoning. So like there are puzzles that use kind of a touch of everything. There's only been one that I was like, I don't know. There's always one puzzle where you're just like, I don't see how that got from point A to
Sure.
B to C. And other people were also in that same boat. So I know it wasn't just me. They also have a site that you can go to if you're like, I absolutely have no idea what this is. And there's a site that'll kind of give you some hints, and then okay, flat out, here's how we got the answer. So there are lots of ways for you to work through it. I like puzzle games, and even in video games, it's the same thing. I like a lot of those types of games. I find them not always easy to find ones that I like in board game form, but I feel like the books are the best ones for me. Like you get a video game, it's like in the game there are puzzles, or you can specifically get like an adventure action puzzle game. I find in board games it is specifically like an exit type game. So it is
Mhm.
a specific puzzle game. I like the books better, I think. Doesn't mean that I don't like exit. I love those too, but I find the books are just easier for me to kind of take on the go, sit in bed and do it. Um, and I say easy peasy, but I mean easy peasy as in like the way it is to carry with you, not to do the actual puzzles. Anyway, all in all, the puzzles I thought were interesting, and it didn't require too much like cutting and things like that. It's just, a pencil, an eraser, you're good to go, and your phone or an iPad or something like that. So Journal 29 Oblivion is the one that I played. That was my first one. I really enjoyed it, and I'm probably going to try and snag the other two that came before it.
Awesome. We're in the reverse situation. I have the first and the second. I did
Oh,
not realize they had made Journal 29 Oblivion,
yeah.
Mandy. So
Okay.
I'm stoked. This is so cool. I'm so glad you brought it to our collective attention here because I got to go check this one
I
out.
didn't know
And
you had them.
yeah, yeah. And I think
Oh,
if you liked, I mean, everything you said about the puzzles and the character, definitely seek out the
yeah.
first one.
Cool. Look at that.
Cool. Well, for first up for me, and I think maybe we'll talk about Lacrimosa together
Sure.
later, right? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So first up for me is Volbara. Volbara is largely a card game. This is published by Studio H. The designer is Olivier Sepierre. The illustrations and graphic design are by Felix Donadio and Alexandre Reynaud. And it's 20 bucks US. 20
Good
US
price.
dollars. Which I'll be honest, I'm surprised at its price. When I looked it up,
Yeah.
I was like, that's only $20, even though it really is quote unquote only a card game. Hmm. So in Valbara, you are going to get your cards, and you will get it plays up to 5, which is
Which is
nice.
great.
You get 5 different deck you get 5 decks of cards, each with the same 12 characters. So you get a deck of 12 character cards for yourself, and the backs are different, right? There's the orange deck, the green deck, the blue deck, that kind of thing. Cool. So every player gets their 12 characters, and then there's a deck of land cards. And ultimately, you are going to be playing character cards and getting land cards, laying out land cards in a little tableau in front of you, and you play through 9 rounds and the game is done. So the game is over and you have 9 land cards in front of you. All of the 12 character cards for each player are the same and they are ranked 1 through 12. They have thematic character names on it and very dramatic, cool looking character art on it. But really, they all also have special abilities. And what the turn is really, really simple. You're going to simultaneously, so you shuffle up your 12, you draw like 5 into your hand, and then you simultaneously pick one card from your hand, put it all down, face down, and then when everybody's ready, you all flip it up at the same time and reveal what card you've played.
Ah,
You resolve the cards in rank order. So if I played a 3 and Mandy, you played a 7, I would go first
right.
because I have the lower ranked card. But they balance that out, of course, with the abilities on the card, right? So even though you may get to go first, maybe your ability is a little weaker or dependent on that positioning, that kind of thing. After you play your cards and you resolve the character abilities, which can be get points, it can be steal points, it can be mess with the land cards that are in the market, that kind of thing. There's a wide variety of abilities. After you resolve your character ability, then in turn order, you will draft one of the cards that are in the card market, one of these land cards.
Right.
You place the land card in your personal tableau and immediately score it. So
Hmm.
there's 5 or 6 kinds of land, like mountains, lakes, forests, that kind of thing. And they all each type scores a little bit differently. Like forest will just have points on it, but maybe mountains or plains will score for how many plains you have, and maybe mountains will score for all the different types of land you have and that kind of thing. So, play a character card, use the ability, draft a land card, score it immediately. And as your tableau gets bigger, right, the scoring can compound based on the land
Right.
cards you get. 9 rounds, the game is over, the person with the most points win. It is exceedingly straightforward. It's very easy to teach anybody who's familiar with hobby games at all in 2 minutes.
Hmm.
And it's just from that point of view, it's very, very approachable. Um, now, I've had a couple of friends compare it to Libertalia. I
Okay.
compare it to Mission Red Planet with the character cards, right? Where you have that simultaneous character or action selection with that reveal. And one of my friends, or one said that, it really stripped down Libertalia to his favorite part. And he's like,
Oh,
well, this is what I want. Um,
okay.
it plays 2 to 5. It scales very, very well. I've played it 2, 3, and 5 2, 3, and 4 or 2, 3, and 5? I think I played it at 5.
Okay.
And it scales very, very well. It was great and snappy at all those player counts. And, another little interesting thing is the back of the land cards have your player symbols,
Oh, neat.
and it resolves your ties. So, man, if you and I both play a 3, we'll look at the land card that's face down, and it'll say, "Oh, well, Mandy's red, so her card resolves first," but they're
Right.
all different, right? So there's a little bit of extra little twist there that I thought was very, very compelling as well. It's such a small thing,
Yeah.
such a small detail, but
But
sometimes it's the details that make all the difference, right?
absolutely.
In a game. So Valbara, affordable, approachable, streamlined, scales great, it's fairly small package, absolute hit. And I had no expectations going into it. I knew nothing about the game going into it. This is a keeper. Like this small box, affordable
Oh,
box that plays 2 to 5, quick and easy to teach, knock out a game in 30 minutes, and it feels satisfying. Yeah, Valbara, they did a great job in this one. Really, really enjoy it.
I do love Libertalia, so the fact that you mentioned that to me, I was like, Interesting.
Ding.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm even more interested. So this one I haven't received yet, but definitely one that I'm now looking forward to trying when it comes.
There you go.
All right. Well, the next game I'm going to talk about, of course, I can't say the name without in my head thinking of, I guess, would that be a nursery rhyme? Hickory dickory dock. The mouse turned up the clock. What does it say? Wait, the clock struck. Is it one?
Well, it's like the
Or sure,
struck, like
whichever, but
it's like a whole bunch of like
yeah,
clock
one
struck
something,
one,
the
and
clock, and
down
then
they
the mouse runs
come. Yeah,
down or something.
yeah.
Anyway, it's been a long time since I've recited one of those, but the game that I'll be talking about next is called, well, you guessed it, Hickory Dickory. And this is designed by Sawyer West. Art is by Sonia Mueller, and it's published by Plaid Hat Games. This retails for about $60 Canadian. Yeah, so I'm assuming it would be close in price in the United States. This game plays for up to 4 players, and I don't think this. Oh no, this is actually a 1 to 4. So it plays 1 to 4 because I remember pulling it out and going, "Ooh, maybe I could try this solo," and ended up playing it with friends in a 3 and 4 player setting. The game I actually didn't put in how long it takes to play, but from our last game, I don't think it's long. I think it's like about an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how many people are playing, give or take. So in the game, you are mice. Yes, that's right. If you didn't know from the hickory dickory part, you're mice. And what they have written is players control a team of mice competing in a royal scavenger hunt hosted by Lord Cuckoo. Cuckoo, like the clock. So every player gets a set of these kind of like cards, like 4 cards, and those are representing your 4 mice. And then you have little meeple mice that match these 4 cards, and they each have amount of storage they can carry. One of them has a huge bag, so there are multiple squares on his card, and then there's some mice that they can only carry a couple little things, and you're like, what does that matter? Well, there are tiles that you're going to try to get into your bag so you can later use those things to fulfill objectives and things like that. So the point of the game is to complete these objective cards, make deliveries, placing tiles on your board, so on those little bags we were talking about, and then they go to your main board of tiles, which has some end game scoring based on how many columns and rows have been completed with said tiles, and you also gain points for running up the clock, not down, up. There's a whole other little mechanism there, being the first one to run up the clock gets you the most points, and then moves up again, and there's another set of points you can get. So, as I was saying before, every player gets their 4 cards or tiles with their mice where you're going to put your tiles. And then there's a main board with this big clock. So, this part we're going to talk about, but you actually have to set up the game every time you play it with the hand. So, your minute and hour hand in the middle of the game board. And I believe it starts at 7 o'clock. And there is like almost like a divot in the hour hand, if I'm remembering offhand here. Offhand. Uh, Yeah, I think it is. And that's where you're going to be putting your little meeples should you not want to take the action of where your meeple is. I think it's the hour hand. Yeah.
Is it the minute hand? Oh
Maybe.
well, oh, it's
No,
a
it's the hour.
minutia.
No, it's the hour hand. It's the hour hand. I
Okay,
remember now
okay.
because it's the longer one. It's the one that moves. So, yeah, we're going with that. It's the hour. It's the longer of the two.
Focus. We can do this.
Now you're doubting me now. Like I think it's right. Okay, so what's gonna happen is on the board there are different spaces at the different numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 12, because it's representing a clock. And there are different actions that you can take. And if you decide you do not want to take said action or take the tile at this space, you can jump on the hand of the clock. And then when it moves to the next space, you have an opportunity because you'll be first if you're first in that hand. Before the people that are actually at that spot to determine, hey, if you want to take that action or not, I'm going to wait until I get to a spot, that I really want to take that action. Obviously, trying to do that before it hits midnight because then everything kind of restarts all over again. You have cards, like I was saying, that are like objective cards that you're trying to complete while you make deliveries. And making deliveries is getting these tiles that are on the top of every number, with the exception of the spots that are covered by the little cat paws, as in you can't go there. But every other space has these tiles you can get if you get there first. Okay, so whoever gets the tile first, and put them in the bag, make a delivery with that mouse. And if it meets any of the objective cards as well, which will have the symbols that are on the tiles, and I think there's like buttons and there are feathers and things like that. But if you have the right combination of that and delivering the tiles, it gets you some extra points. And the points are really cool. Like if you delivered 3 tiles, right? That's 3 points, so 1 point for each tile, and then you're going to get points for the most of symbols, or so if you had certain amount of symbols, so let's say I had 2 buttons, that's another 2 points, and then the most of color, so let's say those 2 buttons were purple, then it's another 2 points, and then if you completed one of the objectives, whatever the point value on there, so all those points plus the objective points gets you those points. You also have points, like I was saying, running up the clock, depending on where you end up. If you end up reaching the top and it's at the 9 point, get 9 points. But as soon as you reach that clock, you start at the top of the clock, it starts over. So you start from the beginning, and then the clock goes from 9 now, or the bottom of the point scale for the clock goes from 9 to 7. So the next time someone makes it up, they'll get 7 points, and then it'll get fewer points until it reaches like a max of like 4. Now everybody can get 4 points for going up the clock and then coming back down. The game ends. It starts at the 7 o'clock, and then once it's made its round up to 12. So you hit 12 o'clock. I guess that's Lord Cuckoo's hour. That's the last round. Finish that round, and then the game will end. And then you count up your points, including those final points on your main board where you have those tiles. Like I was saying, completed columns and rows will give you additional points. I mean, I looked at this game and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to like this game. And I was right. It's super cute, but it's not just because it's cute, because it has some fun things going on with the the different types of actions depending on which mouse you use, because some of the mice can do slightly different things depending on which one you use. It's tricky trying to get the right mouse to make the deliveries, right? Because you make deliveries based on the mouse you're using. So if you don't have the tiles in that mouse's bag, it's not going to be that mouse. And then trying to balance, do I take this action? Now maybe I'll get on and wait. There were times where I had all my mice were at like 8, 10, and 11. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing from like 1 to 7. So I'm sitting here like, wow, that might have been a smart play for me. So making those, oh, wow, me with the cliche expressions, but making sure you're getting the timing right is really important in this game. Sorry, Suzanne. It just fell right into my lap there. Some
Yeah.
of the some of the things that I should say, one main thing for me was the board. As much as I like the whole movement of the hand, I don't like this whole having to set it up every time you play, the little plastic middle part with the hands.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, yep.
It's like, it's not a big deal, but for me, I just want to like put it out and play. I don't want to have to sit here and go, okay, let me remember now how to put this together. Again, it's a minor, thing to consider, but it's just one more thing that I don't want to have to do. So I don't appreciate that, but I like that. I understand the need for it in order to put the meeples in it, um, for the game mechanics. So I know, Suzanne, you played this game, I think.
Mhm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and what did you think about it? I know you may not have played it as often, but what were your thoughts?
No, so I've only played it once, and that's why it hasn't been on my review list, and
Right.
honestly, I'm having a hard time getting it back to the table with that group again.
Really?
Uh, they liked it less than I did.
What?
And so
Oh,
some of the
wow.
challenges that they just found that the tile economy was brutal. That you
Interesting.
would get the tiles around the edges that you really, really needed, but inevitably that getting that timing right, so that you could get there and have that tile still be there in a four-player game, they just found very, very frustrating to the point that it pretty significantly negatively impacted their ability to enjoy the
Interesting.
game. So that's partly why I haven't been able to
Yeah.
talk about it, is that I need to work it with a couple of other friends that I play games with regularly. And I I enjoyed it more. I really liked what are the pulley things that are
I
at the
didn't know what they were
bottom?
called, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I
The
liked
bottom of the
working that,
clock.
and I really like tile laying games that have these spatial puzzles. So once you got the tiles and you delivered them to your board and trying to maximize on that, I liked that. I was awful at it in my game. And maybe that's tied to that tile struggle that we had as a
Sure.
group a little bit, but definitely one I'm looking forward to trying again, because I can see where there is a lot of cleverness and some things that are just done differently. And as we've talked about before, when a game does something a little differently, I really am excited for it. So yeah, one I'm looking forward to trying again, but I just haven't gotten to dig into enough.
Yeah. So no, and that's good to hear. Our group had a very different experience. Everyone really enjoyed it. Played it several times, and we did definitely make use of the wild tiles. I know that in my first game I didn't, but then I made more use of it later, and I found that really helped our game quite a bit. So, eh, I guess it just depends, right? And player count, I think, could play a factor in that. Think 3-player was like the sweet spot for us. 4 definitely,
Probably.
I could see
Mhm.
the challenge with the tiles for sure. So
Mhm.
Hickory Dickory for me was still a win. I definitely think you may run into some of the things Suzanne was saying at 4-player. That is definitely a potential. 3-player for me was the sweet spot. So Hickory Dickory.
There you go. All right, and the last game that we're going to be talking about this episode, Lacrimosa. Now, Mandy, both you and I have
Yes.
played this a few times now, and I know we've been kind of excited to talk about it.
Yes, I have been.
So, Mandy, Lacrimosa, why don't you
No, no.
share the designer names and the designer names and the because you tend to be better with names than I am.
I'll try, but now, oh goodness, my best friend's probably listening to this and going, "You better say it right." So for those who don't know,
Yep,
my
that's
best
right.
friend is Chilena. Mi mejor amiga is Chilena, and yeah, I'll hear about it after if these are pronounced poorly.
Good.
Okay,
Good.
so
Take the heat. Take
I
it.
know, right? So we have designer Gerard Essency, Ferran Renalias, and for art we have Jared Blando and Enrique Corominas. And this is published by
Beautiful.
De Beer Games.
With that little roll to the R's. I love it. I can't do
I
that.
think the
Thank
first one
you.
came off a little French, but I got into it after that.
So, Lacrimosa is going to retail for $80 in the US and, of course, the Canadian equivalent uh, as well. Mandy, as a
It's
nod
about the
to
same. It
you,
might
my
actually
dear.
be a little bit more expensive in Canada, but it is pretty close.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
So, Lacrimosa is a fairly hefty, fairly large Euro style board game, all about players being patrons of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who is dead.
Oh.
And so we are patrons of the dead Mozart, and we are trying to save Mozart's final works in collaboration with Mozart's spouse. So, wow, what a
Thoughts.
theme. Cool. But really that is the setting for this massive Euro style board game where you just have a lot going on. But the heart of it is card based action selection. So you're going to have a big central board and it's got multiple areas. It's got a card market at the top. It's got this map in the middle and then it's got what looks like a music sheet at the bottom almost with spots on it.
Yeah.
Then you also get your big old personal player board and it's got tracks and it's got slots, it's double layered, it's got all sorts of stuff going on.
All the things.
But at the heart of it is these slots at the top and the bottom. There's 4 on the top and 4 at the bottom, and you can slide cards into it because this is a game full of multi-use cards. You are
Mhm.
going to get a handful, a personal deck of cards that have actions and resources on them. And if you play the card to the top slot, you will tuck it and it will reveal the action that you take. And if you play a card to the bottom, you tuck it and it will reveal the resource income that you will get at the end of the round. So every card has an action and a resource, but you get to pick which one you use and when. On your turn, you are actually going to have like 4 cards in your hand and you're going to pick 2. And you're going to play 1 for the action and 1 for the resource. Draw 2 more cards and again, pick 2 in your next turn, action, etc. And then the round ends after everybody's played 4 pairs
Mhm.
and you play through 5 rounds. So that's kind of mechanically what you have going on. And ultimately, of course, you're just trying to collect points, prestige, that kind of thing. And the person at the end of the game with the most points will win. Now, part of Lacrimosa is all about these intermeshing, intermingling areas and what you can do with these actions. So you can take an action, which is uh doing a requiem, and that's the area at the bottom that looks like music notes, and you've got these little markers and you can place them out there next to composer, and basically it's a little bit of area control, and you get a tile. You have to pay and you get a tile that you add to your board that gives you either an instant or an ongoing bonus. You can travel in that city part of the map. There are different city tiles and you can travel between them, paying the cost, which is resource management. And then when you land on a tile, that tile may have some end game scoring. So you take it and
Mhm.
keep it for the end game, or it could give you an instant bonus, more resources, more actions, that kind of thing. Cool. Now you could also do a memory play again in this memory of Mozart's music, right? And so this is getting new action cards because there's a card market at the top. There are two types of cards. There are memory cards and opuses. Memory cards are new action cards, stronger than what you start with, right? And you can get a new one and replace one that you just played. There's a real interesting timing
Mhm.
thing there. You can get opuses, so you can commission an opus. So instead of taking a memory card from the market, you can take an opus card and add it. And opus cards have abilities that you can pay for, or sometimes end game scoring. You can sell them, you can play them, which is the last action. You can either perform it and get a little bit of bonus, or you can sell it and usually get a stronger bonus, but then that card's gone and it won't count for any end game scoring. Ooh, 5 actions. I barely, I mean, it's only 5 actions, but that just skims the
Right.
top of the game of what you can really do with all of those actions.
Mhm.
Um, so like I said, you're gonna play 4 turns per round, 5 rounds, new cards come out, new tiles come out, the composer area gets all crowded and full up, and there's area control for some area majority scoring at the end of the game. There's just a lot going on. Mandy, what did I not cover that you wanted to highlight in just kind of the mechanics or general setting of the
No, I
game?
think you got that. You got the map part where you kinda
Yep.
traverse. Yeah,
Traveling.
you
Yep.
travel. Yeah, no, I think you no, I think you got it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I will just say that resource management, there are 3 resources: music notes, ink, and wheels for the
Yeah,
traveling. I can't
wheels.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And resource management is a real thing. There's 2 types of resources. There's this track on your personal board, and then there's discs that are like
Mhm.
actual resource tokens. Discs will carry off between rounds. The tracks will reset at the beginning of every round. So
Yes.
resource management is also another major part of this fairly massive game. Ooh. All right, Mandy, I will say when we
Yes.
first pulled this game out, the setup,
Yeah.
wow.
The first time
Wow.
especially. Yeah, you're like,
The
"Oh my
first,
god."
yes, yes. The
Yeah.
first time setup was, the only word I can come up with is daunting.
Yeah, it's true.
It was a lot. And once you know where you're looking,
Right.
it makes it faster. But for that first time setup when you don't necessarily have
You're
context
like,
for all the icons on the
"What?"
cards, yeah, it was it was almost off-putting
Yes, I
how
agree.
intense. And honestly, as we're setting it up and, trying to share tasks, we were kind of a little grumbly about it. So I would say that's the first thing, is that this is not necessarily a game to introduce newbies to. This is a
No.
game for people who are experienced in the hobby, because pushing through that first time setup is a lot.
It's a struggle.
Um, but once you play, holy cow, for us, this game, I mean, so Mandy, this game, we've talked about this game absolutely sparked for me. Within the first round, I was like, I love this game. This game is phenomenal. This game is absolutely in my top 10 for the year. I suspect this would definitely be in like my top 100 games. It is a heavy, meaty Euro that is just got so many different paths to points that you can explore,
Mhm.
but it doesn't feel it. We played a game in like 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
We looked at the clock, we're like, "How has 2 hours passed? There's
Yeah.
no way we've already been." It flew by. That's how engaging and just how into the game you are working it. You, even in your personal downtime, you're not down. You
Right.
are thinking, you're plotting, you are watching what the other player is doing, hoping that they don't take that thing, or trying to figure out the timing of your moves. If I
Mhm.
go here, but then Mandy goes there, then she's blocked me
Right.
there, so I better do that first. That kind of thing. You're just, your brain is always going. You always have something to think about. You always have something to consider, which just keeps you massively in the game the whole
Yes.
time, which is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Um, that's just kind of my general feel. Mandy, how about you?
No, no, you summed it up really, really well. I definitely just once you got into it, the time flew. Yeah, yeah, you were literally like, "Oh my goodness, like we've been playing this a couple hours." You didn't feel it at all, and I love that because when it starts to feel sloggy, that's when you're like, "Oh gosh, no, I don't need to play this again." No, I agree with everything you were saying. There were a
Great.
couple quibbles I had, little quibbles, but
Yeah,
we can.
please.
Um,
I have a quibble too, so please.
okay, it's minor, and I think this threw us off when we were learning the game at first because it seemed maybe I was just doing really well, but the bottom part of the board, I'm so sorry, everybody. My names are incorrect. Um, is
The
it?
like composer area,
Yeah, the
the
composer
requiem area.
area. It kind of threw me a little bit, and this is why iconography is really important, and I feel people really have to pay attention to things. They're numbered one, two, three, four. So it almost seemed like you were only able to access them
In sequence.
in sequence.
Yep.
And we looked everywhere, and nowhere does it actually say that. So the
Ooh.
first time we played it, no, I think we just played it, yeah, kind of like wherever, but it did,
Instinctually, yeah.
yeah, but it did come across as that. So unless we played it wrong many, many times, nowhere does it say that they do need to be played in sequence, but definitely the imagery on the board made it seem like you do play it that way. So
And you don't.
you
You can
don't.
play anywhere.
It was
Right,
right, you can
yeah,
play anywhere.
which is a very important part of the game.
No, it really is, and I really have to stress, you can play anywhere because that will really throw your game off if you don't. But this is just my point is for people to pay attention when you're doing these sorts of things because it does kinda look like that.
Mhm.
That was probably, like, the biggest thing, and then, the cards at the top, you know how they had on the board the 2 different types of cards depending on how they
Yep,
came out, the cost.
yep.
I found that a little hard to see sometimes, for me, and I think that could have just been done a little bit differently. I don't know if with using more contrast because the board is quite busy as it is. But those were the only 2 kind of things that I had taken issue with.
I thought that that's a great point. In point of fact, the cards between the opus and the memory cards, they're everything is very thematic, right? You've got
Right.
these tans and parchment colors and things like that. There's a lot of filigree,
Right.
and it does make those cards look very similar. And when you're trying to separate them in the market, because the way that the costs work, you have to slide them up and down a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, I could see where
Just
it might not have been as thematic, but a little more differentiation would have been there.
right. Agreed.
I know one thing our group struggled with is that the tiles that you get in that composer section in
Mhm.
that requiem area, that the printing on them is quite
Yeah,
small,
that's true.
and you have to have them down there. It's not like something where you can kind of choose to put them on the side of the
Right.
board because they're associated with a specific space, so you have to have them down there. And if you are at the other end of the table, I mean, we ended up taking photos on our phones and then
Oh,
reading the tiles on our phone
got it.
because they were just too small to
Yeah.
see, and it was absolutely critical that you understood what every tile did for you to make strategic decisions. So that is a thing. I don't know if they could have solved it differently because of the
Mm,
massive amount of stuff on the board, but
sure.
we struggle with that. That would be a quibble for sure. The other random quibble, the production is lovely, the card quality is
Mhm.
fine, the wood tokens are nice, the cardboard tiles are nice. You get these double layered boards. The
Mm.
fold every player gets their own and they fold, and they've got slots for the cubes, which is all nice. And then they have slots that you slide your cards. So the issue that we had there is one, if you choose to sleeve your cards, they will not work with the
Yeah,
board unless you
absolutely not.
use like the perfect fits because there's just not enough room. And I don't even know if the thickness would impact your ability.
Yeah.
So it's not a game, it's not a board for sleeving. And then quite frankly, we just found it fiddly. Like I appreciate the detail and the reason why they wanted to do that,
Right.
but we found tucking the cards sometimes you bump the edge and you'd have to slide it around or pulling them out. And because you're pulling them out every round, you have to reset them every round. We just found that a little bit fiddly and kind
Right.
of almost wish you could just tuck them under the board,
Right.
which you can't do because of the way the structure of the board
Right.
is. So I mean, I feel like that's a personal preference to some degree and pretty nitpicky. And honestly, in no way, sometimes you have games where things like that impact your enjoyment of the game. Ultimately, for us, in no way, for me, in no way detriments my enjoyment of this game. I think Lacrimosa is a standout. It is a really a sparky, shining Euro game that came out in the last year or so. And Devere, I really feel like Devere has been knocking it out of the park lately with what they're choosing to produce because Lacrimosa is tip top. So check this out. I would expect you're going to see it on some top lists. It's going to be on my top list for sure.
Yeah, I actually think they were out of stock for a little while. I know when they got it,
Deservedly
they
so.
yeah, they were like, "Just when you talk about it, just if you tell people to go and get it, just temper it a bit," because I think they were out. They didn't want people to be upset that they didn't have any available. I think it's all sorted out now, but, that's how popular it's been. So yeah, Lacrimosa, good choice.
Well, folks, we are lucky to have another expert join us for a You're the Expert segment. This time, Aaron Trammell is joining us. This is the author of a book called The Privilege of Play that tackles some very heavy topics in the world of tabletop gaming. So, thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. Let's take a listen to what Aaron has to say.
Mhm.
Hi, my name is Aaron Trammell, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Informatics at the University of California, Irvine, where I teach classes on games and game studies. In the community, I wear a few hats. I am also part of Gen Con's DEI advisory board. I am one of the coordinators of the Diana Jones Emerging Designer Award. And for the Indie Game Festival, I have run the tabletop games jury for the last 3 years. And so I'm often somebody who is looking at and trying to evaluate and appraise tabletop games. But I'm here today to talk to you about my new book, which is called The Privilege of Play. It's a history of hobby games and race over and geek culture in the 20th century. And I just kind of wanted to take a second to chat about what's in the book and why it might be interesting to you, the viewer. And so basically, if you've been part of the tabletop game scene past few years or the hobby game scene, you know that things have been changing and they've been changing rapidly. There's a very different kind of audience for tabletop games and board games than there was, say, 10 years ago, and then there was 20 years ago. And the new audience is more diverse, politically active and interested, and engaged with representation and design politics of who's designing the board games and role-playing games that they play. And so my book basically goes to tell the story of how we got there, how we got to this point where the tabletop games community is rapidly diversifying. I start by talking about model trains and the communities that made model trains at the turn of the 20th century, and how this was a sort of privileged activity that only people who had access to the money to buy electricity, which meant a lot of white people at the time, could really do. I move on to think through how these communities were the very same that began to play some of the war games that Avalon Hill put out in the 60s and 70s, but also how Avalon Hill excluded people from the hobby by posting pictures of like Nazis on their magazine covers, questioning the origins of World War II, and glorifying things like plantation living, especially if you're the one overseeing the plantation in their publications. I then kind of move through the Alarms and Excursions Dungeons and Dragons community that was an early fanzine and talk about how it was a space of belonging, while also talking about some of the early diplomacy fanzines and the sort of like engagement that political engagement that the people in these early diplomacy fanzines had, before jumping forward to Board Game Geek today, talking through the politics of the tabletop gaming hobby and what's changing and how things have rapidly been basically diversifying over the last 10 years. And so that's The Privilege of Play. It's out right now on NYU Press, and you can buy it basically anywhere online that books are sold. So if you're interested in that, please get a copy and check it out. And that's basically what I do. That's my research. I'm a researcher, and my work is on understanding basically the history of our hobby, and specifically within that history, what the role of diverse people has been. Because for me, I've always found the hobby to be a space of belonging, and I'm hoping that by understanding it better, we all can recognize where we're doing good and where we can do a little better. So anyways, thanks for hosting me, and yeah, this has been Aaron Trammell.
Thank you so much, Aaron. The publishers did provide review copies of the book
Yes.
to both Mandy and myself. I just am finishing up. Mandy, I think you're in the same spot with
Yes,
finishing up the book.
very close to finishing.
So I'll tell you what, this is I didn't know. I've read a number of books in the board game about the board game industry or about board game mechanisms, things like that. I didn't know what to expect. It's obviously a
Right.
topic very near and dear to our hearts. I did not know how this book would tackle it, and there have been some surprises.
Hmm.
So, a lot to process, just in that there is a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot. So, Mandy, why don't we chat a little bit about the book next episode? What do you
Yeah,
think?
because it's definitely going to be a lot to take in. And actually, this would give an opportunity for anybody who also wanted to read it and who listens to the podcast can kind of follow
Yeah.
along with us and see, if they were thinking along the same lines, or maybe they had some other ideas. And this might lead to potentially something we can discuss further in a forum if people are interested in doing so. So, yeah, let's do like a part two. So you get an idea, and then we'll have a deeper discussion next episode.
Awesome. So that is The Privilege of Play by Aaron Trammell.
Yes.
All right. Woo. After a little bit of heaviness, we need to lighten it up maybe a little bit
Yeah.
with some pie.
Pie's good. I like pie. And this is an interesting pie. You pick this pie, Suzanne. You talk about said pie.
Well, I mean, it's mostly just because it was served up to me on a platter, so to speak, that we had the Spiel noms come out. So of course we decided to go with, hey, what are some of our favorite Spiel de Jahres games? These are games that won the Spiel de Jahres over the last 55 years, 75. It started in 75, I think.
Oh wow,
So
okay.
about
Well done.
55, 53-ish years. Some math. That's how good I am at games, folks. I can't even do that math. So yeah, some favorite Spiel de Jahres games. I mean, they have to be good because they won the Spiel, right? They're all
There you
good,
go.
right? Mm,
Exactly.
not necessarily, but ours are. Our
Those
choices.
are, I think.
Mandy?
Some classes. Yeah, so the first one I feel as I can say it's a classic. And that is Carcassonne. And Carcassonne came out in 2000. So it's been a while. And for those who are not familiar with Carcassonne, it's a tile placement game. And I can confidently say that I am really bad at this game. My roads are great because you're trying to build some roads with your tiles. You're trying to kind of finish off the I guess would they be cities? Sorry, I don't know the technical terms, but these land
Yeah,
masses
cities.
of tiles, either you'll see them, you want to try and close those off to get
Cities.
points. I am really bad at scoring points on the fielded areas. Terrible. I don't know what it is. That's where you have to like lay down your meeple and say, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
score on these tiles. Yeah,
Hmm.
just terrible. But Carcassonne still have a lot of fun with it. And it's one of the early games that most people kind of have started off with and then progressed. And yeah, it's an oldie, but it's always a goodie. So Carcassonne for me, definitely see why it won. And fun tile laying game. It's great.
First up for me is the 1994 winner, Manhattan. I literally talked about Manhattan just a couple of episodes ago, but this is a area control game, ultimately set in the city of Manhattan, right? And one of the things that's so impressive about Manhattan is its table presence, where you have units that stack up on each other as you're building it up. It is a pretty straightforward game, which I love, and I mean, 94 to 2023, it holds up beautifully. I could pull out Manhattan tomorrow and play it and really enjoy it. So Manhattan from 94 is my first slice of Spiel de Jahres pie.
All right, all right. It's a good one. I feel we're gonna have a mishmash here. Next on my list, yes, never thought these words would escape my lips, but it's a party game. And it is Just One. I know, I just don't play a ton of them,
Hey,
but Just One
it
is
won the spiel for a reason.
there you go. And that was in 2018. And for those who don't know Just One, it's a cooperative party game, and you are giving out one word clues in order for the person to guess what the answer is. There's obviously a little bit more than that, but that's about the gist of it. So super fun, Just One. I have to say, I actually really, really like this game a lot. So if you
I do
haven't
too.
played it, you should give it a whirl.
Oh, absolutely. Next up for me is the 1985 winner, which quite frankly surprised me. I did not realize that this game was that old. I first played it probably in maybe 2000 more, and that's Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. This is a
Oh,
narrative deduction game where you're solving a mystery and it's got different books in it and different envelopes in it and things like that. And a lot of very clever things that I'll be honest, in my, I don't know, hubris, did not associate with games produced in 85. But there you are. So Sherlock Holmes, the consulting detective, they've iterated on it. There's lots of additional versions and
yeah.
sequels to it for a reason. It really stands up. So that's my second slice of pie.
I feel like I didn't play the original, but I definitely played an iteration of
Sure, sure.
this game. My next slice of pie is one Suzanne and I have definitely talked about and played before, and that is Istanbul. And there have been variations of that, roll and rights and whatnot, but Istanbul is one of those games I just can't get enough. And this was in 2014. Gosh, which wasn't that long ago, but it seems like it was a long time ago. I don't know. And in this game, it literally is you have different tiles on the board, and you're trying to visit said tiles, and you want to try and get these gems in order to, end the game. You want to try and get 6 or 7 gems. I can't remember what it is. And you do so by these. You have stacks, and you kind of drop them as you travel. And I'm just again another game that I enjoy, but I'm really not great at. But that's okay because visiting those stalls are quite fun. So Istanbul for me is another winner.
Yeah, one of my honestly top
Yeah,
100, top 50 games. So good.
super good.
Next up for me, Zularetto, the
Hmm.
2007 winner. This is a game about building a zoo. What fun is that? I love it. And it's just tile laying. You have a board with different pens, different areas in it, and you're just putting different animals in there and doing some set collection. It's pretty straightforward. It's absolutely enjoyable. It's by designer Michael Schacht. It's one of my favorite works by this designer that is just to me so prolific and
Right.
just one of my favorite designers. Associated Games, if you've the Coloretto card game
Hmm.
is in that same family, but I really like Zularetto both for its setting
Yeah.
and for the way it uses the board and the different tiles associated with it. So 2007 Zularetto.
Oh, it's a good one. I like that one. Well, my final slice of Spiel de Jahres pie, is Quirkle. And Quirkle came out
Excellent
in
choice.
2006. Yeah, like it's so colorful and fun. And I think that's probably why my eye was drawn to it. But it's one of those abstract type games where you have colors, you want colors and shapes together in order to score points. That's literally what it is. And you have tiles in order to do that on the board. And again, there are different types of games I feel that have come out and done similar things, potentially under different names. But Quirkle's always the one that's at the forefront for me. So that is my last slice of pie.
There you go. And in some ways, my last slice of Spiel de Jahres pie is associated with yours, Mandy, because
Mm,
I selected Azul. Now, I was
nice.
real torn between Azul and Cascadia. Real tough choice for me, I gotta
Ooh.
say. Cascadia was just last year's winner, right?
Yeah,
So
which is really
I
nice.
kind of. I kind of gave it a demerit for being so new for no reason, completely arbitrary on my
Wah
part
wah.
and probably unfair. But I had to put Azul up here. This is 2018's winner. This is a tile laying game about building mosaic walls, something to that
Yeah.
effect. And you get this gorgeous production with these tiles that you're laying out on your board, just trying to line up drafting tiles from these center circles and then smartly timing all that and putting them on your board. Because if you draft too many and you can't place them, they break and you lose points and you moan and groan about it. But it has a scoring that I associate with Quirkle. There may be a game earlier than Quirkle that
Sure.
calculated scores this way, but I don't think of it that way. Where the more frequently you revisit a section, the more your score compounds in a given row or column, and that's what Quirkle does. And Azul leverages that scoring on top of its great drafting, on top of its beautiful production and approachable play rules. So Azul 2018, just a standout example, and that's why you see it expanded. In point of fact, Mandy, they just released the travel edition of
Oh
Azul.
wow. There's so many additions.
I bought it. I
You
bought
did
it. I had
not.
to know. I had to know. I mean, it doesn't matter that I already own Azul and
All
Azul
of them. Do you
Queen's
got the chocolate
Garden and
Azul?
Azul, yeah. I don't have the chocolate Azul yet.
Yet.
We'll see. But it's real interesting. It's got a beautiful production. Like you get like little plastic trays and the
That's
little
cool.
plastic tiles and the it's a lovely production for a very affordable price. The worst thing about it is the box, but I like Azul so much. When I
Yeah.
realized that they made a travel edition, I wanted to get that so that I could bring this lovely game with me on the go more easily. So there you go. Azul, it had to be in my pie if I owned the travel edition, for gosh sake.
Exactly. There you go. Well, that's some good. I think overall we had some delicious pie today.
Excellent, excellent. We're so good, Mandy.
Yum, yum, yum.
Well, folks, tell us which Spiel de Jahres game we omitted that
Yeah.
we shouldn't have. What are your favorite games that won the Spiel de Jahres? What do you think about the 2023 nominations? We want to hear from you. Thanks so much to everybody who's been chatting in our Board Game Geek Guild. That's on boardgamegeek.com or guild number 4131, or search for Salt and Sass. You can also email us with all of your opinions, your kind and constructive criticisms, or your vociferous praise at saltandsassgames@gmail.com. Or you can chat us up on the socials, Mandy.
Oh yes, the socials. So we've got a few of those. So you're potentially watching us right here on the YouTube, but we are also on the Twitch, and we are at Salt and Sass Games. We're also on Twitter, but it's spelled a little differently there. Salt N Sass Games. So that's Salt N Sass Games. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And my symbol, it's actually, if you're watching, it's on screen, but it's at 613 Mandy. And what about you, Suzanne?
And I'm on all the social media platforms, including Blue Sky, at 425 Suzanne.
There you go.
As always, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Salt and Sass. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be part of your extended gaming family. Lots of good stuff happening in the gaming world. And, we're starting to head into June, July, August.
Yeah.
That's hot board game convention season. So we will be
Hot.
seeing hot, caliente.
H
We
A
will be
W T.
seeing so much so much news coming out that we're really excited to get to talk with you about in the very near future. Stay tuned next episode when we will have a little more thoughts on the privilege of play and more games that we've been playing. Until then, stay hydrated and play lots of games, folks. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode was sponsored by Druid City Games, where player experience comes first. Check out all of their great games at druidcitygames.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, please check us out on coffee.com/Salt and Sass Games. Thank you for your support. We are also a part of the Goonhammer Media Network. Check out more of their content on media.goonhammer.com. Salt and Sass is produced with love by Suzanne and Mandi, and we'll be back next episode with more salt, more sass, and more games.